What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Gaming Without Parole. Sitting across from me this week, and as always, Dezrah.
And sitting across from me is Bryan Paul.
Hello again.
Hello.
Hello. Again. Hello. Who's like a little Neil Diamond in their life?
My father-in-law.
Well,
he was a professional musician for a while and has this burning, intense hatred for Neil Diamond.
he's not a fan of our show, is he?
No, he's not.
In that case,
No.
just called to let you know. Let's start over. No.
Actually, no. The worst thing Neil Diamond has ever done, he actually did I Dreamed a Dream from Les Mis. There is a cover of him out there singing that. And yeah. I had no strong feelings for you before then, Neil, but wow.
There's a cover out there of Bob Dylan doing "Yesterday" by the Beatles.
See, that I can actually see.
It's real bad.
Oh no, I'm sure it's terrible,
I
but
love
it
Bob
makes
Dylan.
sense.
Love Bob Dylan.
Right.
Don't listen to it.
Welcome to MusicCast.
Yeah, this is not going at all as planned. We need to talk about something really important today.
Yes, very important.
Very, very important. In the thing,
Patreon.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
If you like what you see, please support us on Patreon. http://www. Patreon.com/withoutparolegames. We're going to give you the content either way, but if you want to support us, then by all means, go ahead.
Absolutely. And that's how you do a plug.
https://. We need to tell you about something. These are seminal games in my life. I am so nervous about talking about these games. These are the Lucasfilm adventure games. And I mean, I think half of them that we're going to talk about are from when they were actually called Lucasfilm games, and then I think later on it was LucasArts.
LucasArts, yes. Yep.
These games are so important to me as a gamer. They were seminal games in my childhood. I'm nervous about talking about them because they're so important to me. I want to do them justice. I want this episode to convey all the very important feelings and history that I have with these games. I almost don't want to do this episode.
Well, and also too, I mean, it's a type of gaming that doesn't really translate well to modern audiences. You know, adventure games don't really exist in the form they did, especially the ones we're going to be talking about today. And you know, graphically, well, they're not quite up to today's standards.
It's true.
However, I think there's, you know, if you take off your modern day brain and just look at it like I want to play a decent game, I think there's a lot of gold in Thundar Hills.
Graphically,
yeah.
I think if you like that old pixel art style, like Nintendo and Super Nintendo era, then a lot of these games actually do hold up because they're timeless in that regard.
Actually, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. Right now, the trend is like that 8-bit graphics are really popular. I mean, my kids have T-shirts of like the Avengers that are all done in 8-bit style. You know what?
Okay. We wear interesting shirts on this show.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Well, I'll plug this. This is Amanda Palmer. Hi. I'm sure you're not watching this, but a couple years ago, she was in a production of Cabaret in the Boston area.
Love Cabaret.
Yeah, Cabaret, amazing show. And this version was great. She actually played the, oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of the character, but Joel Grey's character.
Yep, nope. I love it, but I have no recollection of characters' names or story development or songs. Or.
So, okay. There's a little personal history as I actually
I'm useless.
Got hired to be one of the entertainers. The idea was the show was done as like you weren't going to see the show, you were going to the Kit Kat Club.
Okay.
And so I was hired as one of the kind of roving entertainers for the show. And this is kind of one of the main images from it. So,
and now we're all caught up.
Yes. So, Gaming Without Parole is not a neo-Nazi propaganda film. This was actually a Amanda Palmer fan shirt.
Thanks for filling us in.
Yeah. Anyways.
All right. I don't even know what's on my shirt.
It's a Compass Rose.
There we go.
All right. So, anyways, LucasArts, Maniac Mansion. Oh, sorry, that's yours.
Well, no, it's all right. Actually, so
we're going to talk about some really scummy games.
Indeed. Now, before Lucasfilm created the classics that I want to talk about, in 1986, they actually they released Labyrinth, the video game. Now, this was actually based on the movie of the same name, David Bowie and all that. It was published by Activision. This was the only adventure game that Lucasfilm didn't publish on their own. Activision published it.
Oh, okay. So they created it, but Activision published it.
Absolutely.
All right.
And you can really see, if you look at videos of this game, you can see it's such a foundation for all of the games to come. Now, we're not even going to take a break here. 1987, the very next year, is when one of the biggest classics of all time came out of Lucasfilm, and that was Maniac Mansion.
Now, was Scum, for I was reading off, the Scum is the game, not just a bad joke, it's the game engine that kind of runs almost all the games we're going to be talking about today.
SCUMM, it is the script creation utility for Maniac Mansion.
Was that developed exclusively for Maniac Mansion, or had they started developing it for Labyrinth?
No, as far as I can tell.
It was just Maniac.
Yep, because although Labyrinth played similarly to Maniac Mansion, there were like not a list of verbs on the bottom of the screen, but there was a word and then a list of things you could do with that word. It was set up a little bit differently, but again, the foundation was there. But when Scum was created, now Scum was kind of a combination programming language / game engine, so that the guys at Lucasfilm could make games easier and faster without having to know like a ton of programming language. They could, in Scum, create the environments and the characters and the objects and the way all those things interacted with each other.
And not only that, as its own programming language and its own interface between the hardware, you could actually make these games cross-platform at a time where that didn't really exist.
Exactly.
So you could just code the game once and then export it to your Commodore 64 or your Amiga, whatever.
Oh, and in the list of things, the list of different consoles and computers that this was compatible with was like endless.
Yeah.
There was like probably at least 10 different platforms that you could port this to. It was pretty incredible for its time.
And at a time when you couldn't really have like software that worked on Windows and Mac, for instance.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very, very easy because of Scum and how brilliantly it was made. It was very easy to do that. So we might be spending a lot of time on something weird like the software, but this is really, really important to the history of gaming.
It allowed these games to come out 1 year after each other. There was literally a 1 year development cycle for each of these games, and we're looking back at them now as these classics, these amazing games, and the development cycle was really short.
Well, because they were able to spend their time just on the creation of the art and the story and the character, rather than having to recode and redesign the programming every time. So,
exactly.
Huge savings.
So Maniac Mansion 1 by Ron Gilbert and Gary Winnick.
Yep.
Very important people at Lucasfilm Games.
We'll be hearing their names. We'll be hearing their names a lot.
We sure will. They wanted to create a parody of a B horror movie, and they sure did.
Oh, yeah.
It's about this kid named Dave Miller, and you get to choose from a group of his friends. You get to choose two characters from his group of friends that you want to take with you on this adventure to go into a mad scientist's mansion, Dr. Fred, and save your girlfriend. Now, your girlfriend's name, it's Sandy.
Hi, Sandy.
I only learned through this research that her full name is Sandy Pants.
Sandy Pants.
Which is, just spot on with the humor in these games.
Sandy Cheeks. Sandy Pants.
Sandy Buttocks.
Sandy Buttocks. Pinky Cheeks.
Somebody's been to the beach. So Dave Miller and his friends go and rescue his girlfriend Sandy Pants. And it's just this, you go through this mansion and you meet the weirdest cast of characters ever. There's Dr. Fred and his wife, Nurse Edna, their kid, Weird Ed, and then they have two pets roaming around the mansion. One is a green tentacle, and the other being a purple tentacle, obviously from an octopus of some sort. Very strange, but kind of awesome.
Yeah.
The way you'll be able to see right here, the way this game is set up is that about maybe 2/3 of the screen is the action area where the characters are walking around. You're kind of point and clicking, telling them where to go, and then the bottom third, I guess. Did I say?
Yeah, bottom third. Yep.
Yeah.
2/3.
I forgot what my first fraction was. Yeah. The bottom third is all about all this list of verbs that you can click on. You can click, like open, and then click on the door, and then your character will go and open the door. It seems silly. In an era where you walk up to anything and you hit X and you'll automatically interact with it, this seems a little redundant, but for the time, it was pretty revolutionary.
Right. Yeah, and you could interact however you wanted, providing however you wanted was one of these 8 options.
Right.
But you could try that with pretty much anything in the world that had an action. So you could try to talk to the door if you wanted, and sometimes things would happen.
Yeah, sometimes you get a pretty funny response because the creators actually took all these things into consideration and took the time to write funny responses for a lot of them.
Yep.
Let's see. The reason I think Maniac Mansion now, it resonated with me for multiple reasons. One, because you could play it endlessly. You could choose different characters, and you could run through the game in different ways, solving the puzzles in different ways, sometimes encountering brand new puzzles or circumventing other puzzles. And all of the characters had their own personalities. It was really interesting to see. There were 5 different endings for the game. I don't know if I saw them all. And I'm not even sure how this game came into existence in my life. Like, it just, I don't know if I just chose it one day at a game store. My parents were like, okay, you want that? We'll get you that.
When the student was ready, the master will arrive. Or the game.
We're just going to go with that.
Sure.
But I was obsessed over this game. And it was very difficult to die. This is in an era where King's Quest, Space Quest, all these Sierra games were sort of built around learning via death.
Yeah.
Everything you did killed you in those games. And Lucasfilm took a completely different take on it.
And that was a design principle that you find through most of the Lucasfilm adventure games. It's difficult to die, and it's also...
And sometimes impossible.
Impossible, and also impossible to get yourself in a situation where you can't win.
Also, another awful Sierra trope.
Yes.
I remember there was a game called Codename Iceman. Brian, why are you doing this to yourself? But my brother bought Codename Iceman, and he probably spent 30 hours getting from the beginning of the game to about 2/3 of the way through.
Oh.
And at one point,
this ends.
Yep, he's like, he's solving puzzles. He's not cheating, using hint books or anything. And then he cannot get any further.
Yep.
And finally, we go get the hint book because there was no internet.
Yeah.
And we find out he needs a specific item that was on the literal very first screen. It was just sitting there on the beach on the first screen, and if you don't pick it up, the game doesn't stop you at any point.
And it sucks for you.
In Lucasfilm, I feel like that's just bad game design.
It really is, yeah. I mean, there should be some kind of notification, or at least a way to go back and fix it, or go back to that first thing. But yeah, so Lucasfilm, sometimes they failed, but most of the time the design was, we want to make this solvable. It's going to be hard. Yeah. There are going to be logic puzzles that are baffling, or sometimes just don't even make much sense, but there's no point where you're going to get to a dead end and like, no, you can't solve the game from here. Sorry, start over. Yep. That's just not one of their goals.
Yeah, they did. I think they did a much better job with their games than Sierra did, and I love those Sierra games too. So I'm not trying to put anything down. What I will say, this is a little bit strange. I was so obsessed with this game. I remember when my friends who had Nintendo Entertainment Systems came to school one day with their Nintendo Powers with Maniac Mansion on the front of it. Now, I had been obsessed with Maniac Mansion on the Commodore 64 for a very long time, and I was just so intrigued by the concept of this being on the Nintendo. I couldn't even fathom how they were going to do it. And I will tell you, years later now, I've played all the different versions pretty much ever created, and I firmly believe, despite some censorship, the NES version is by far my favorite one to play.
Really? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Everything moves really fast. Characters practically run around the screen. Oh. And the music is really good. You can turn it on, turn it off, but all the characters have a different soundtrack. They have they have Discmans in their pocket, and you can turn them off and turn them on and turn them off, and the whole thing is just an awesome experience. And what needs to be mentioned about the NES version is that in the credits of the NES version of Maniac Mansion, one of the playtesters, his name is Tim Schafer. And that is his very first credit in a Lucasfilm game ever.
Yeah, Tim Schafer, we're going to be talking a lot about him, and he is just one of the most creative and amazing game designers just ever, and continuing to put out amazing stuff. But we'll
segue into Double Fine games
at some of the
at a later date. But that's and I also do want to mention that the very next year, Zach McCracken in the Alien Mindbenders. I thought it was even better than Maniac Mansion. Zach McCracken was originally meant to be a more serious game, sci-fi with slant, and but Ron Gilbert actually convinced David Fox, the writer of Zach McCracken, to really infuse some of that Lucasfilm humor into it, and he did, and it feels like it was written by the same people as Maniac Mansion. You go all over the world, you try to prevent aliens from taking over the phone company, and there's this one cute little Easter egg where in Maniac Mansion there was a chainsaw hanging on the wall that you could never use because it had no gas, where in Zach McCracken you find chainsaw fuel, but there's never a chainsaw. And if you try to pick up the chainsaw fuel, your character will say, "I don't need it. That's for a different game."
And that's something we'll find in a lot of Lucasfilm games. Well, pretty much all of them. There is this kind of zany. Well, I hate using the word zany, but really the zany sense of fun about the game. Even though this weirdest stuff is happening, or aliens are taking over the world, there is this through line of in jokes and this great sense of humor that follows through all the games, no matter how varied the settings are.
Totally.
Which brings me to
Yes, indeed.
one of the games that is pretty much nothing but humor, and that's Sam and Max Hit the Road.
Yeah.
Sam and Max, if you don't know of them, there was a cartoon on Fox for a little while.
Whoa. Really?
Yeah. Oh, you didn't know this?
I had no idea.
Yeah, I think it only lasted a season, unfortunately, because Sam and Max, if anything, is a concept in search of an audience. For if Sam and Max are your thing, they are definitely your thing.
Yeah.
But it's like this cute fuzzy bunny and his dog pal who are police, and it sounds like, okay, it'll be, and the drawing style is very cartoony, but the content is very much not.
Oh, right. It's very adult themed.
Very well, but it's not like dropping F-bombs or swearing and things like that. It's just, to reference the thing that happens in the game, you see this cute kitty cat on the street, and one of the characters says, "I'm going to name him Mittens because I think he'd make a good pair of them."
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
So that's the kind of humor. So, Saturday morning cartoon, maybe not quite so much, but it's not like Adult Swim either. It's this real weird mix. But it originally started as a comic.
Right.
A comic created by, I just forgot his name. I wasn't going to write it down because I was so sure. But, Paul Shaver. Paul Shaver? No, that's the guy from...
That's the late night with David Letterman.
Here's what we're going to do. There's his name. Okay. So, sorry.
That guy.
But he had created this comic, and he was working at LucasArts. And eventually he would write little comics that would go onto the company newsletter and things like that. And after Maniac Mansion was a success and Zach McCracken was a success, they were like, "Oh, we're looking for a new IP. Hey, what's this stuff?" And they were like, "Hey, let's use Sam and Max." So in 1993, Sam and Max Hit the Road was released. It was based...
Steve Purcell. Yeah, I'm trying to save myself from having to edit it.
Yeah, Steve Purcell. I'm so sorry.
Yep.
Steve Purcell.
I apologize for interrupting, please.
And it was weird. It was one of those things I knew so well coming in here. I don't have to
write that down.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, Steve. Your work is amazing. But so it was based on the comic called Road Trip, Sam and Max's Road Trip.
Okay.
The general idea is Sam and Max are Sam and Max are freelance police. That means whatever you want it to. Basically, at the beginning of every either episode of the show, issue of the comic, or version of the game, they get an assignment from a commissioner, which we never see or actually hear, and they then go and do a thing. On the Road is a classic road trip. They go and visit crazy things like the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota.
I remember that.
Which is actually a real thing. And, the plot is they're trying to find a freak show's escaped Bigfoot, but who cares? Really, you're playing Sam and Max, you're watching Sam and Max for the jokes. Now, I would never recommend this for any of the games we're going to watch or going to talk about today, because playing the game is really an integral part of enjoying it. It's feeling the frustration of not knowing the solution to a puzzle and then finally getting I figured it out. If you don't have a super huge amount of time, there are playthroughs you can watch of Sam and Max. And this is the only game I would recommend, well, maybe you can skip the playthrough, because it is just entertaining and it's just funny watching them. Now, I'm not going to strongly recommend that, because I think the puzzles are entertaining too. With the Sam and Max world, it is a very cartoon logic sort of thing. And I guess that is true for a lot of the Lucasfilm, LucasArts games, but with Sam and Max specifically, you're in a very weird cartoon world, so you have to think like Looney Tunes style to solve a lot of these puzzles.
I'm going to say that when I was a kid, and maybe I was given a game for Christmas, and probably one for my birthday, I had a lot more time to spend with each game, and it was like I didn't want to rush through it. I really wanted to, every time I entered a new screen, I wanted to drag that cursor around and really find every single object and make sure I didn't miss anything. But as I've gotten older and brain cells have died, I don't have time for that, and I don't have the attention span for that. I can't play adventure games like I used to, so I'm going to recommend that for most of these games, for most of them, in my humble opinion, just watch the videos, because the frustration, there's not as much satisfaction, I believe, anymore in solving these types of puzzles, because some of them are so harebrained, some of them are so off the wall.
That's true.
That you're like, how was I supposed to figure that out without a hint book, aka nowadays the internet?
Yeah.
So I think watching a video, especially for Sam and Max, highly recommended.
I will say one thing, that there's a couple things that are different about Sam and Max that they introduced. First of all, even though it still runs on Scum, it loses the verbs.
Yep.
So in Maniac Mansion, you actually had the words down there. In Sam and Max, you have context-dependent cursors, so you can switch to an eyeball, and you can just put the eyeball on things. That means you're going to examine the thing. Or you can switch to a hand that's going to grab it or use it or what have you, or a mouth that'll talk. So you can navigate there. Also, your inventory is something that's kind of hidden now, as rather than earlier games, everything was on the screen. So now with Sam and Max, you can see the entire screen. The other thing that's really nice is, at least in Sam and Max specifically, there are no red herring items. Anything you can pick up and take with you has a use.
Really?
At some point in the game.
That's surprising.
Yeah, and now it may not be something that you need to actually finish the plot, but there's nothing you're going to be carrying around for no reason.
Oh,
there's
that's part of my enjoyment, I think, in some of these games, was just picking up everything that I could, because in, I think, all of these games you had an unlimited inventory.
Yes.
The idea was to collect everything, so when you encountered a puzzle, you really hoped you had the solution in your pocket.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm not going to say this makes it easier to figure, because this allows you to do a lot of combining of the items too, and you have to combine.
Yeah.
But it is. If you are kind of a more modern gamer and I just want to get through this, it's nice to know you're not wasting any time with just okay, well, why am I carrying around this flashlight with no bulb in it? Well, it turns out there's going to be a reason eventually.
Just want to say, rubber chicken and pulley. That's all I'm going to say about that. And if you know what that means, comment below. There's one.
I'm going to give away one solution on one of the puzzles. It's not really giving away, but it gives you a sense of what the humor is going to be like in this game. So at one point, you're in a tunnel of love. This is actually fairly early in the game. And you need to stop the ride.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually you find there's a circuit breaker. But you're kind of going past it fairly quickly, so you have to figure out, well, how am I going to shut off the circuit breaker? The solution is to take Max, who is your furry bunny sidekick, dip him in the water, and throw him at the circuit breaker so he shorts it out and electrocutes himself. If you thought that was even mildly amusing, this is your game.
Yeah. Is there even the potential that Sam and Max are just out of their minds, and that there is no commissioner?
Almost
is that a possibility?
Almost certainly.
Oh
yeah. There's a great this is kind of in the early days. This is great meta humor. They're very aware that they're fictional characters, or that they're crazy, or that it's Deadpool before Deadpool.
Okay? Oh, right.
It's that kind of thing. So. Yeah, if you like that kind of humor, it's fantastic. Now, this was the original one, came out on MS-DOS. Actually, another interesting thing I kind of discovered, this was one of the first games with full voice acting.
Oh, for real?
Every character has voices recorded. There was a full-on soundtrack. But here's the thing, we're such in the early days of gaming. There's the MS-DOS version. There was a floppy version and a CD-ROM version.
Oh.
The floppy version did not have the voices because they were floppies, and it would have been 3,000 floppies.
Yep.
So the CD-ROM version did.
Yeah, there wasn't much in the way of audio compression in those days.
No.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting as well. So, but next we have.
So I'm going to jump back a bit to the third game on the Scum engine. Mm-hmm. Apparently, I just went right in order, because apparently the first 4 were my 4 favorite games.
Well, and this is kind of interesting. Bryan said, this is such an integral part of his early gaming.
Yeah.
For me, my first adventure game was actually the last one we're going to talk about today, and I ended up going backwards from that. This is an interesting kind of game. What other kind of games are there like this? And I moved back. So, anyways,
this is what I thought video games were for a while. This is my friends
this
were playing.
This is what they were for a while.
But my friends were playing Nintendo, and I was playing some other games on Commodore. But these were the ones that really roped me in.
Mm-hmm.